we are live for episode 23, Bulking 101.
Woohoo!
We're talking about bulking, getting big, a calorie surplus. So, before we get into all this, it's going to be a very exciting topic. Before I do my plugs, I actually am just going to say that I'm really excited for this topic because so much information about there is about weight loss and valid, right? We live in a society that has hyperpalatable foods, all occasions, events are all based around food. And so much information is about weight loss. My stuff too.
Yeah.
And the other day when I posted, I just bulked for 6 months, here's what happened. It got over 500 likes. That's kind of outside the norm for my posts. It's on the higher end of average. And I was like, wow, people really care about it. I didn't think anybody would give a shit about my progress on a 6-month bulk. I mean, people do like my progress update posts, but anyway, and I get a lot of questions about bulks, calorie surpluses, same thing. And, without getting too into it, without spoiling what we're going to be talking about, let me just do the standard plugs. So if you want a solid training program, check out the A-Team. There's a 7-day free trial. It's $27 a month. If you need help with training and nutrition, check out Forward Forever. That is a phenomenal program with both Danielle, the dietitian, and myself. If you want help with one-on-one coaching, you need that extra little bit of accountability, and you want a personalized workout program and personalized nutrition targets and habits and 12 weeks of education. It's a fucking great program.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of what we've built. By we, I mean Maddie and I, because she helped me so much with the curriculum of with all that, structuring it. I mean, we poured our hearts and souls into it. And so we're getting some really cool clients that are moving through it now. I keep a pretty tight roster because it is a lot of it's a lot of work, But anyways, that's called The Change Project. You can check it out on my website. Follow us both on Instagram if you want. Try to give us a 5-star rating. And 2 more plugs that I haven't done in the past. If you want to support me in some way and you need supplements of some kind, I am now sponsored by Legion. If you use code ALEXTME, that's how you pronounce my last name, is Teamy. So the code is ALEXTME. At checkout, you'll get 20% off your first order and double points on purchase. It also gives me money, which is sick. I love that. And if you want to try the best diet app on the market, I am sponsored by Macrofactor. Use code ALEX for a 2-week free trial. Okay. Before we get into it, what are we watching? What are we watching lately? Taskmaster series.
Yeah.
What, 16
or 17, the most recent one
in the UK. I guess they call seasons series, so it's like season 16 or whatever. And
phenomenal
we are
show.
It's so good. It's so good. It's like we've talked about it on the podcast before, I think.
Yeah.
But it's basically like a guy who gives 5 comedians silly tasks, and they do like multiple tasks per show or per episode over the course of like 10 episodes. And then they get scored on how well they did those silly tasks. It's super funny. It's a really good time.
Yeah.
Besides that, we're watching Survivor. The season finale will be tomorrow, which will basically be today by the time you're listening to this podcast. I'm going to upload it tomorrow, not tonight. Yeah. We record these at night. It's 9 p.m. right now. We have to record it when our son Milo goes to sleep. So that's just what we're working with right now.
Yeah.
Also watching Invincible season 2, getting caught up for season 3. And then we're looking forward to Severance season 2. If you didn't watch Severance on Apple TV, that gets a 10 out of 10 from me, literally 10 out of 10. It's, in my opinion, right now, it's my favorite show of all time, and there's only been 1 season. Now, of course, a show can go up or down. And with such a high bar right now, I have to assume that season 2 will be down. But I also have such high expectations because I know how good it was season 1. However, with Westworld, season 1 was amazing. Season 2, bad. Season 3, worse. Season 4, way worse.
Yeah, but that's like a controversial take. Like, there are some people who still think that show did not go downhill.
That's insane to me. Anyway. Okay. Anything you want to add before we get into the topic?
I don't think so. I think you've covered it.
Cool.
I don't know what else we're doing.
Cool. Milo turned 5 months.
Yes, he did.
He's very cute.
He's adorable.
I was telling my friends tonight about that he can do the tripod stance.
Oh, he loves it.
If if you're unfamiliar with a tripod stance, it's where you sit on your butt and then like put your knuckles down in front of you to like kind of posture up. So he can do that, and he gets really happy, really smiley, really laughs a lot.
Loves practicing sitting. It's
love that.
So great.
He's super cute.
Yes.
We love being parents. Okay, so let's talk about it. Bulking. So what is bulking? So bulking is, you define it. Go ahead. You should know what it is.
Yeah, bulking is, well, I mean, do you want just like the basic, like
sure,
bulking is gaining weight? Like
yeah, bulking is gaining weight. What's the purpose?
Surplus. I mean, there can be, I feel like, two.
Sure.
One, like some people genuinely want to put on body fat, and that's like a totally valid thing. Like totally I feel like that's a very not discussed thing, but some people do want to gain weight.
Yeah, I like it.
And then the other is you're supposedly going to gain muscle faster while bulking than you are at maintenance.
That is the most common goal, I would say, is that people pursue a calorie surplus or a bulk to try to increase muscle gain rate. And the question that we want to answer today is bulking dead? And this has been a recent social media trend to say bulking is dead. Bulking is vaulted. It's what the Gen Zs are saying. Bulking is vaulted.
What does vaulted mean?
Oh, it's like going back in the vault. You know, you're like thrown in the vault.
Oh, vault. I was hearing volt, like VOLT. Oh, yeah.
No, I'm not that up to date on the lingo. Although I do still have TikTok. As long as it's not banned, I do still have it. Although
we're on a time crunch.
I'm going to need to start looking at all the lingo. And so people are skeptical of the benefits of bulking. I'm going to be mean for a second because they have no clue what they're talking about, and they hear one influencer say something and they're like, oh, I'm going to say exactly what he said. And so I've heard a lot of people with like anonymous profile pictures, right, who or are like, and I don't want to be like super rude, but like they don't look like they've stepped foot into a gym, and they say stuff like, oh, bulking is dead, you don't need to bulk, it's not an energy dependent process, muscle growth is not an energy dependent process. And it's just like they are just reiterating what their favorite influencer said. And I see this around a lot with like the conversation around seed oils, with the conversation around Red 40, with all of that. They're following the worst people in the world, like Carnivore MD. They're following Liver King. They're following, right? And then they hear these little sound bites from podcasts. Ironic. I know I'm on a podcast. I get it, but you guys have been listening to this for a while. You guys know I come with the facts. You guys know I come with the sources, the research. I try to be as nuanced as possible. But I do understand at the end of the day that I am a bro with a podcast. I get that, right? Like I get that. But I mean, you're listening, right? I mean, I see the statistics. I have listeners.
That's
so
true.
You're listening. Anyway, so the main reasons that people are skeptical of bulking, they claim that muscle gain is possible at maintenance, which is true. Mm-hmm. There are criticisms of the dreamer bulk approach, which totally fair. We'll talk about the dreamer bulk. Well, let me just say, what is a dreamer bulk? Are you familiar with it?
Isn't that just like a free for all?
Yeah.
Like you just kind of, yeah.
No structure, go crazy. It was popularized, I don't know what decade. I'm going to say roughly the 80s or 90s, maybe even early 2000s. But basically it was these bodybuilders who are on copious amounts of steroids who would, they would show videos of them like eating at a restaurant or even eating at home. And they would have like 7 burgers, a mountain of fries, gravy. And they're like, yeah, you got to bulk. You got to eat big to get big, bro. You know? And it's like, the reason you're huge is because you're blasting copious amounts of steroids. Like that's the reason you're huge. And like, they probably do need those extra calories because they're 300 pounds, you know what I'm saying, of like muscle. But anyway, so there are some criticisms of the dreamer bulk approach where it's a free for all. You eat as many calories as you possibly can because that leads to excess fat gain. Reasonable. And then there was a new study that was published, I believe in 2022 or 2023. Anyways, it was by Eric Helms and colleagues. And it took place during COVID. And anyway, it compared maintenance versus a surplus. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the episode. But basically, Maybe we aren't. I'm scrolling through the outline right now. I guess this is my opportunity to talk about it. So
it's section 1.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. It's like the next thing.
It's literally the next thing.
We're supposed to talk about. You're right on topic.
Okay. Well, before we segue into that section, let me just say that my stance on bulking is, I've gone through bulks and cuts for continuously for the last 4 years. I don't know if I've spent like a week at maintenance in terms of like a dedicated, like I'm going to eat at maintenance. Like, of course, like, I've not, I don't think in the last 4 years I haven't tracked for a single week.
For a whole week?
For a whole week? I don't think so. Ooh. Definitely not in the last 2 years. In the last 2 years, I've tracked like 99% of days.
Yeah, maybe prior to that.
Maybe if I got like sick or something. Even then, I would track my calories when I'm sick just to try to get enough.
I was trying to think of like sometimes when we travel, but I don't know.
No, I mean even because when we travel, I'm trying to eat enough, and so like that's. So I have severe food allergies, for those who don't know. And so a lot of times tracking for me is a way to make sure that I'm eating enough, because otherwise I just won't eat. My hunger signals aren't like that intense. I could go a few meals without eating. Tracking for me is about trying to dishonor my hunger, or, my satiety cues. Okay. So anyway, so I'm a fan of bulking. I think it is, so that's my bias. However, I think there's nuance to that. I don't think anybody should hop into a bulk. And speaking of which, what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to talk about why the sentiment against bulking. Why do people think it's not worth it? What is the point of bulking? Nutrition for bulking, where we're going to cover your calories, your macronutrients, like your protein, carbs, fats, your fiber too. We'll give some practical eating tips. We're going to cover training during a bulk. We're going to talk about ending a bulk, psychological and lifestyle considerations, like who is it right for and who is it wrong for, myth busting, some common claims, some case studies, like some scenarios where it makes sense or makes less sense. And then we'll finish up with some closing thoughts. So that's the structure of the episode. All right, let's get into it. So yeah, as Maddie alluded to, the first thing that we have here is the study by Eric Helms, which basically they had 3 groups of people. All were tracking their calories, all were lifting weights, and they assigned them to either maintenance calories, a 5% calorie surplus, and a 15% calorie surplus. Okay. So they want to see, like, is a more aggressive, compared to maintenance, but then also is a more aggressive calorie surplus even better for muscle growth? Well, it was only 8 weeks long. It was during COVID times. And the 5% calorie surplus group got a little carried away, and they ended up being closer to the 15% calorie surplus group. So we basically ended up with 2 groups, and it was maintenance versus for 15% calorie surplus. Now, this is still valuable. This is still helpful. And in those 8 weeks, they found muscle growth was basically no different. Maintenance versus a bulk. And so a lot of people point to this singular study and are like, well, look, muscle growth was basically the exact same. And I think my slight, and I love Eric Helms, he's brilliant, but I think my slight rebuttal to it is it's 8 weeks. How much muscle? And they're using, whether they're using ultrasound. I'm sorry, I'm unfamiliar. I feel pretty guilty about this, that I'm not sure how they measured the muscle, whether it was a biopsy, whether it was ultrasound, or whatever. But in 8 weeks, the amount of muscle growth that you're going to gain is already going to be minimal. But then to say, like, the amount of muscle growth compared to these 2 dietary patterns, like, man, it's going to be really hard to see any differences. You'd have to go 26 weeks, like, to see any noticeable differences, and maybe even longer, especially in trained individuals where muscle growth is a little bit slower. I was just going to ask if
it was
trained individuals. Yep.
I'm sure you mentioned that before, and I just zoned out and didn't hear it. But
I don't know if I did or not, but it's good to remind the listener. And so, like, muscle growth absolutely is possible at maintenance, but I just feel like we have an overwhelming amount of evidence now to say that it is still slower than it is in a surplus. There was a study on this that I unfortunately didn't add to this this outline that I'd like to pull up. And so in the meantime, do you want to cover the Dreamer Bulk criticisms in this next point under section 1?
Yes. Yes. Okay, so as we established, the dreamer bulk is a large calorie surplus. Typically, it's just like you gain a lot of body fat or more than you would at like a more structured bulk, or as I called it earlier, just like a free for all. And so the idea is the more you eat, the more muscle you'll gain, or the faster you'll gain muscle. However, it's going to be really marginal, the difference, and it's probably just not worth the body fat gain that you're going to have with those extra calories. So that's probably the biggest criticism. Is that it's just you're really adding on a lot of body fat that you're going to then want to cut, or that a lot of people may want to cut in the end, which is just going to extend how long you're going to be in a calorie deficit in order to quote unquote reveal the muscle you've gained during the dreamer bulk. So does that kind of summarize it?
Yeah, I think
that's
that was
my
good.
understanding.
No, I think that was really good, and will hypothetically will increasing your calories to the nth degree, to like the highest level, will that hypothetically increase your rate of lean mass gains even more? Like maybe your body might put on even faster, but we start to see severely diminishing returns, and diminishing returns in the sense that, like, assuming this person doesn't want to add excess body fat,
right? Like, or at least not that much,
right? And so yeah, I would say I would compare it to an extreme fat loss phase where like you're basically just starving yourself. I think these are the extremes that we probably want to stay away from, not only from a physiological perspective, but also a psychological perspective. It's just not worth it. So if you or a loved one are thinking about going into a bulk, like, dude, just dial it in. Like, don't be like, oh, I can eat whatever I want now. Because, okay, yeah, sure, if you do that, fine. But know that you are going to be one of tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people who have done this. They said, oh, I'm going to bulk. And then they end up fat. I mean, they end up fat. They end up super overweight and very unhappy. And then they're the people who hop on TikTok and say, bulking is dead. Bulking is vaulted because it didn't work for me because I got fat. It's like, well, you did it like a dumbass. You treated it like a free for all. And I mean, so yeah. Anyway, the article that I was looking at, if you're ever curious about this, it's by Slater, Gary John Slater and colleagues, and it's titled "Is an Energy Surplus Required to Maximize Skeletal Muscle Hypertrophy Associated with Resistance Training?" So that would be one that I'd take a look at if you're curious. They really look at the response that training has. In addition, I should say that the response to a calorie surplus that muscle growth has. I don't even know if I said that right, but you guys know what I'm saying. All right, next up. So what's the point of bulking? So why bulk instead of body recomp at maintenance? So I was literally yesterday just recorded a podcast with my friend Luke Smith. You can find it on my just DM me for the link if you want that one. But it's in my reels, but I pulled it away from my profile, and so it's on my reels tab on Instagram. He tagged me in a reel. I put it, or like anyway, it doesn't matter. Anyway, so maintenance does have a limit for muscle gains, and especially as you get more advanced. And body recomp, for those who are unfamiliar, technically this, in my definition, this could be the increase or decrease in both body fat or muscle. I don't think there's a right way to say, because if I gain 40 pounds of body fat, did my body change composition? Absolutely it did.
Yeah.
But most people are saying body recomp from the perspective of they want to gain muscle and lose body fat while eating at roughly calorie maintenance, meaning they will roughly stay the same weight. And so this is a very feasible option for a lot of people, and probably the route that a lot of people should go rather than moving into a calorie surplus. Now, where it might not make sense is, for advanced lifters, people who have been lifting for intelligently with structured training for 5, 10 years plus years, where they're getting close to their genetic limits, where it's really, really, really hard to gain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, et cetera, pounds of muscle. And so that then it's like, yeah, maybe that person might, if they still want to gain muscle, they still want to get bigger. Yeah, you might want to go into a calorie surplus, knowing that when you move back into a calorie deficit, you might lose some of that muscle, not all of it. But it's like let's say we gain like 3 pounds of muscle, 3 pounds of body fat. We go into a cut, we lose 3 pounds of body fat, we lose 1 pound of muscle. Great, we're up 2.
Mhm.
We do that again. We do that over and over and over and over and over again in the pursuit of just getting bigger. And like, why? Oh, I don't know. I'm mental. But it also could make sense, a calorie surplus could also make sense for somebody who just wants to be bigger in general. If you are like, let's say you're 110 pounds, you want to be 120 pounds. How are you going to do that? You got to go into you got to gain weight. You got to be in a calorie surplus. And same thing, when I was graduating high school, I was $120, and I just wanted to be a little bit bigger. And since then I put on 45 pounds, 50 pounds. And I couldn't have done that without a calorie surplus for an extended period of time. Yeah. So we'll talk about who it's like better or worse for a little bit in more depth later in this episode. So skip ahead like 30 minutes if you're curious for that part. Don't skip ahead. Please listen to the whole thing. Skip ahead, then come back. So the benefits of going like faster, slower in terms of bulking. So faster leads to quicker muscle gain, but also more fat gain, like Maddie said. And then slower bulks, they still result in the muscle gain, and a very similar amount, but they do require more patience because that rate of weight gain is, like I said, it's going to be very slow. And so with weight loss, we're looking at something like you lose a pound a week. And it's very rewarding, and maybe it's less, maybe it's more, depending on the person, whatever. And it's very rewarding to see that scale change. But it's tough to go into a bulk, go into a calorie surplus, and your weight's fluctuating and you're trying to zoom out and you're looking week to week and you're like, I don't even know if I'm up 300 grams. Like I literally cannot even tell. And so you really have to zoom out and look at a month to month kind of weight, or like, man, 3-4 weeks of weight changes.
Yeah.
This is where I'd consider just like an app that does this for you. Honestly, it just makes it a lot easier, especially with bulking. With fat loss, you can, I don't know. You don't need an app. It's fine. So yeah, who should consider bulking? Those who are, really focused on maximizing muscle growth and are comfortable with gaining some body fat. It's very important. But if you're somebody who's like, I have struggled with my weight my entire life. I just lost 30 pounds and I feel amazing. Now I want to build some muscle. Should I go into a bulk? I would be like, hell no.
Yeah.
Or no, that would be I never want to make decisions for somebody.
Right.
But that would be like I think we should seriously consider this. Like in a not like I don't think you should do it, but I don't want to tell you what, you should or should not do.
Yeah. At the very least, to hang out at maintenance for like a hot second.
Yeah. Because like I said, like the difference in muscle growth at maintenance versus in a bulk, it's nothing groundbreaking.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've covered that yet, but it's not going to be anything that is super, super shockingly like way, way, way faster.
Right.
But
we're still talking pretty slow, all things considered.
One more person that may want to consider surplus is somebody who's already lean. If you're already lean and you want to gain muscle, like you need to add more weight to your frame, right? And so when I get down to like, if I, I'm doing a fat loss phase right now, but if I get down to like, the very lean point, I'm not going to be able to just go at maintenance and then build as much muscle there as if I went into maintenance with a slightly higher body fat percentage where my body could then pull from my stored body fat. So that's something to consider too. If you're already very lean and you want to build muscle, you might need to go into a small calorie surplus.
On the note of like people who maybe it's not recommended for, you have a note of like body image issues.
Yeah.
If you're someone who's really attached to the scale, like the number on the scale, and you have like a really hard time mentally with those changes, bulking is probably an intense way to go about muscle growth.
Yeah. You guys, I think a lot of people would be shocked by the amount of muscle that you can gain just sitting at maintenance.
Yeah.
Like, you do not need to go into a calorie surplus.
And similarly, I think a lot of people would be shocked at the body changes you can achieve at maintenance.
Yeah.
If you, yeah.
All right. Next section, nutrition. Let's talk about it. If you have heard all these, yellow flags, we're waving the yellow flags, caution, and you're still like, no, I want to do a bulk. I want to do a surplus. Then hell yeah, let's do it. Okay. So like we've talked about, more calories does not equal more growth. Please go with a very conservative surplus. Please. If you go into a 500, 1,000 calorie surplus, you're cooked. I mean, in 6 to 12 weeks, you're going to be like, I think I'm bigger. You are bigger. You just put on multiple pounds of body fat. You just put on 10 pounds of body fat. Congratulations. Please do not do that. So here's some recommended rates of weight gain. Now, this will kind of change. I'll talk about it. But for beginners are people who are relatively new to training or structured training. Maybe you've lifted weights before, or maybe you're brand new to weights. Your body is going to soak up muscle like a sponge. You are going to be able to gain muscle at such a ridiculous rate that you can afford to increase your calories quite a bit. So 1 to 2% body weight increase per month. Now, I'll talk about this after. Let me just write this down. I want to give people, instead of just body weight increase, I also want to give them calories to body weight conversion, like some kind of numbers. Okay, so for beginners, 1 to 2% body weight increase per month. For intermediates, bring that down, as we start getting a little bit more, maybe 2, 3, 4 years into training, probably bring that down to 0.5 to 1% body weight increase per month. And for people who are more advanced, gains are going to come slow. So there's no point in being in this big surplus because you're just not going to be able to, the muscle growth isn't there. So 0.25 to 0.5% body weight increase per month. These are rough targets. They may change depending on your situation. Maybe you have better genetics, like my buddy Nate, who, it's like he looks up a Google photo of Planet Fitness and puts on a pound of muscle. It's unbelievable. All right, so if you're like, wait, hold on, but how many calories do I need to eat to actually gain that much body weight per month? That's a fair question. So first, let's take your body weight and then multiply it by the percentage that I said, okay? So go ahead and do that. You can pause here if you need to, but I'm going to keep working through it. Let's say you're 150 pounds, right? And you are a beginner and you're like, you know what, let's still stay a little bit more on the conservative side. Let's say 1% body weight increase per month. So you want to increase by how much? Go ahead.
150.
What? No.
You said, wait, what did you say?
Okay, I'll handle the math.
Yeah. You do this to me on the podcast all the time. You start rattling off numbers and you're expecting me to just like do equations. Don't ever do that to me.
Okay. So you're 150 pounds. You wanna do 1% body weight per month, 1.5 pounds. That's where we'd be looking at. You say 150 pounds a month. End of the year, we're gonna be over 1,000. Okay, so all right, so we're 150 pounds. We're shooting for 1% body weight per month, 1.5 pounds per month. Now, very roughly, very, very, very roughly, please do not go online and be like, oh, Alex said it's exactly this many calories to gain weight. Even in research, they use this number. So I've seen a few, I don't want to bash other coaches or anything like that, but I've seen other coaches that are kind of like, it's not this exact number. It's like, okay, it's never that exact number. The label on Triscuits isn't exactly 70 calories for 7 crackers. Like, it's like everything is rounded with nutrition. Like, it's all rounded. Our nutrition labels, our calorie estimates, our calorie maintenance, our calorie deficits, it's all rounded. And then we work off of data to adjust. Okay, so that's my rant, please. Anyway, roughly to gain 1 pound it's about 3,500 calories. Okay. Or for a kilogram, it's about 7,700 calories. Um, for anybody outside the US, stop listening now, because that was the best kilograms to conversion you're going to get from me. Anyway, so 3,500 calories to gain a pound. So multiply that by 1.5, because that's the amount of weight you want to gain across a month. So 3,500 times by 1.5 would be 5,250. Yeah. 5,250 calories. You divide that across, 30 days, basically. So we're looking at 175 roughly calories. Let me do the math on that really quick. Just 5,250 divided by, what I say, 30 days.
Yeah.
It's 175 on the money.
Wow. Wow.
That's good. I mean,
That was impressive.
Usually my mental math is decent, but I'm honest to God, that was just a guess. That was just like a rough guess.
Wait,
yeah. Anyway, okay. So, 175 calories surplus per day. That's not like all of a sudden you're eating 2 pints of Ben and Jerry's, you're getting pizza, you're getting Taco Bell.
Right.
175 calories, which we're talking about, this is a slightly more aggressive. This is for the beginners, right?
Yeah.
This would be the absolute high end for an intermediate. 175 calories is like a granola bar. Like one extra granola bar.
For all intents and purposes, you could eat 175 calories over and still be at maintenance. Like,
actually, okay, that's actually a really good point that we didn't have written down, is metabolic adaptation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so do we have an episode on that, metabolic adaptation?
I think so. Let me
I think so too. You go check that, but I'll talk about it. And so metabolic adaptation, if you guys are unfamiliar, you're probably familiar if you followed me for a while now, but it's basically that our energy, we do have an episode on
episode 19.
Episode 19. Our energy expenditure adapts to the energy we are supplying our body with. So as we increase our intake, our body will probably expend more. I personally experience this to a very high degree. I will go from, oh man, my maintenance could be as low as 2,100 when we're deep into a cut,
right?
And it can get up to 29, even 3K. Like, I mean, I have a very adaptable metabolism, it seems, an adaptable energy expenditure, it seems. So that's something to note too, is like, if you increase your calories above where you think maintenance is going to be and you start gaining, and you're looking at like, and you're really zooming out, keep in mind that first week you increase, that scale is going to jump up 2-3 pounds. You're just holding into more stomach content. And if you keep gaining 2-3 pounds, slow it down, bring those calories back. But if you are, you bring those calories up and you're like, wait, the scale is staying the exact same. Okay. In that case, your energy expenditure, your metabolism upregulated. And so you need to increase a little bit more. And this is where that kind of guess and check happens, where you get more data over time. General guideline for calories, a 100 to 300 calorie surplus is probably a good idea. That's dependent on experience level and leanness. If you're leaner, you can probably go a little bit higher. And if the more experienced you are, the lower you should stay on that spectrum. So if you're brand new to exercise, maybe a 300 calorie surplus will work for you. Maybe you can gain muscle really fast. And if you've been lifting for years, keep it small. Keep it to a 100 calorie surplus. You're gonna be gaining about a pound a month with that. Here's my hot take, though. This is my hot take, and I think it was Greg Nuckols I don't want to put words in his mouth because I'm not positive, but I think it was Greg Nuckols that kind of like clued me in on this. Was that it's maybe less about being in a surplus and maybe more about not being in a deficit. And there is a difference there. And maybe the surplus, a small calorie surplus, just acts as a like insurance, like against a buffer. Against being in a deficit, because there are these metabolic processes that downregulate when we move into a calorie deficit. I mean, your body's like thinking like, holy shit, we got to pull from stored energy. Are we really trying to spend energy on building muscle? No, that's very far down the list in terms of like keeping us alive, keeping the heart pumping, keeping the brain functional, keeping the kidneys filtering shit, keeping the liver operational. muscle growth happens to be very low on the priority list for the human body because it's not necessary to keep us alive. So anyway, that's kind of my hot take. Now, I will say there are circumstances where like a surplus obviously is needed. We've talked about them. We will talk about them again later in this episode. When to adjust your calories, if your weight gain stalls, increase your surplus probably by 100. And I would give this like 3 weeks of data because sometimes your body weight will just kind of stay the same. Water weight fluctuations will kind of mask it. But yeah, 3 weeks at a time, check it. If your weight's stalling, increase your calories by 100. And then if your weight gain is too fast, like I said, if you start gaining 1 pound a week and that's a consistent trend, you are going way too fast. You're probably in the neighborhood of like a 500 calorie surplus, and you probably need to bring that down to like you need to slash your calories by 300-400 calories. This is where I would just download Macro Factor though. If you're serious about wanting to do a calorie surplus and you're willing to track as accurately, I would probably spend the money, download Macro Factor. Obviously, I'm going to plug my code because it gives me money. So code Alex gets you a 2-week free trial. I know I plugged it already in the podcast earlier, like in the beginning. And I don't know, it feels weird for me to plug affiliate codes and stuff like that, but I am very proud to be affiliated with Macro Factor particularly. Mm-hmm. I am very, very proud of that. And Legion for me just made sense. People are always asking for supplements or like what supplements I recommended. And I always recommended Legion because they're third-party tested. Like that matters. They do sell some stupid shit like fat burners and shit. So stupid. They should really know better. But anyway, okay. Yeah. So Macro Factor just takes care of it for you. It's what I've been using for the last 2 years. It's a good app. They adjust your targets based on your calorie expenditure, based on your rate of weight change, basically. All right. Next, let's talk about macronutrients. So protein, fats, carbs, fiber. Fiber is not technically a macronutrient, but we're going to talk about it anyways because it's important.
We talk about fiber a lot.
Yeah, Maddie loves talking about fiber. It's like her favorite topic. I'm not even kidding. So for protein, shoot for 0.6 grams per pound or about 1.3 grams per kilogram of body weight. And more is fine. If you've heard like, wait, hold on, why 0.6 grams? I've heard 0.7. I've heard 0.8. I've heard 1 gram per pound. All of those are fine. All those are absolutely fine. Yeah. And when you're in a deficit, yeah, maybe you do want a little bit more to help retain or even gain muscle. Mm-hmm. But when you're in a surplus, you probably don't need as much protein intake because your calorie intake is higher. So I don't know. We have enough research now on protein and how it relates to hypertrophy for me to say the difference between 0.6 grams per pound and 0.7 grams per pound, it's marginal. Yeah. It's very, very marginal. We start to see diminishing returns. Now, I'll say like, I'm in a deficit and I'm at 1.1 grams per pound. I'm eating like 175 grams per day. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I get up to 200 grams plus when I start getting really deep into a deficit. But when I'm in a surplus, I bring that down to like 140.
Yeah.
I'm bringing that down to like 0.8 grams per pound, give or take. But I eat higher protein. It's not something I struggle with. Yeah. I don't need to smash protein bars. I can't because I'm allergic. I don't need to smash,
Yeah, you don't do a ton of protein supplements.
I do one protein shake in my coffee.
Yeah. But even that, when you're in a deficit,
I sometimes curtail that a bit. Yeah. Okay. I know I just talked about how awkward affiliate codes make me feel, but because we're talking about protein, you probably don't need protein supplements when you're in a surplus, right? Because protein supplements are really just a way for you to get protein a little bit easier. But if you do still need protein supplements, I'm newly sponsored by Legion using code ALEXTME. That's Alex, the letters TME at checkout. Gets you double points. It supports me. And if you're listening to this like right now, near the end of the year of 2024, they're doing a BOGO. They're doing like a buy one get one 50% off, or I think that's the sale. So it's a good sale. Okay. And expanding a little bit more on like, the more is fine comment above like 0.6 gram per pound, like they're just diminishing returns. And so I don't want to say like 0.8 grams to be optimal, 1 gram per pound to be optimal. 1.3 grams per pound to be optimal. And then somebody's like, holy shit, I hate protein. I hate the way I'm living. I hate the way I'm feeling. I never want to eat protein again. It's like, okay, that's not good for people. And the amount of people that I work with, actually right now, I work with multiple clients who have worked with other coaches in the past who were, these clients were shocked when I said, show them the research. It's like, no, you don't need to eat 1 gram per pound plus. This guy was eating like 300 grams of protein a day. And it's like,
a lot.
He was like, yeah, no, I sucked. I hated it.
Yeah.
It's like, but no, yeah, obviously you hate. I would hate that too. That sucks. Yeah. So anyway, there's just diminishing returns. So like if you're getting higher and you're enjoying it, there doesn't seem to be an issue with that either. Mm-hmm. Okay. Fats. So for your fats, you want to be eating about, so fats are important for like our cellular health, our hormone production, all that kind of good stuff. Satiety too, but it is calorie dense. Fat is 9 calories per gram. So we want to be getting some, but we want to avoid excess because it's easier for it to be stored as body fat. It's like a very direct conversion. So fats, shoot for about 0.3 grams per pound of body weight, or about 0.6 grams per kilogram. Feel free to go more if you want, but I wouldn't be like overloading your calories into fats if possible. I'd be trying to prioritize carbs when you're increasing your calories. They're harder to store as fat. They fuel our training. So what I would do is I'd hit your protein and fat targets. And honestly, you probably don't need to worry about hitting your fat targets. Like you probably don't need to focus in on this because I've never met somebody who has not hit a fat target, like a daily fat minimum ever. I've never met somebody. I've looked at, I don't even know how many dietary logs at this point, enough. And I've never met a single person.
Yeah. You'd have to have a pretty particular diet.
Very particular diet. You'd have to be vegetarian or vegan because then you're not getting the fat from, or you'd have to eat like meat, like chicken, which is so lean,
Yeah. But I feel like even if you eat a lot of chicken, like you're probably still getting, like you're not getting no fat.
You're not getting no fat. You're getting less fat, but yeah, I don't know. Anyway, you probably don't need to worry about fat too much, but yeah, try to hit your protein, your fat targets first, then allocate all remaining calories to carbs. But please don't overthink this. Just hit your calories, hit your protein, and ideally hit your fiber too. You're good. You're absolutely good. Now for fiber, go listen to what episode is fiber?
21.
Episode 21 on fiber. It's such a good one. Fiber is so underrated. If you are interested in bulking, you should be interested in fiber. Yeah. So aim for about 14 grams per 1,000 calories. So if you're eating 2,000 calories, 28 grams fiber would be great. More is fine too. But yeah. If you are struggling to eat enough, on a calorie surplus, on a bulk, try to focus on calorie dense foods. This is the time when we can lean into those liquid calories, adding fats to meals, some olive oil, some sauces. Sauces are very calorie dense. You may have to lean into those things. Mm-hmm. And then, just avoid those, you're going to be full, like literally you're going to be full of shit, because you're eating so much more. Like it's like.
Especially if you're going from a
deficit to a surplus.
Because if you're going from maintenance, you actually really aren't.
You really aren't. You're not eating that much more. That's a really good point. For me, I have these drastic swings.
Yes.
Because I go from a deficit, where like I'll be eating, what am I eating? Like 2,300 calories right now. Mm-hmm. Then I go into a surplus where I'm eating 3,000, 3,100. And it's like this massive swing.
Yes. That's a huge difference. Not only in like food consumption, but like also your hunger is going to be way different between the two. But if you're going from maintenance.
That's a good point. It's not going to be that much of a change.
Yeah.
Well, if you're like me, just make sure that you're getting your fiber intake in. Even if you're not like me, just make sure you're eating your fiber.
Most people are not getting their fiber.
95% of Americans are not eating enough fiber. That's an actual statistic we talked about on episode 21.
We talk about
We're
fiber
so passionate about fiber because nobody talks about fiber. Not enough people talk about fiber.
No, I made this point back episodes ago when we were talking about protein and high protein snacks and stuff like that.
Everybody talks about protein.
And I said, protein's great. We should talk about protein. A lot of people don't actually get enough protein, yada, yada, yada. But I think more important is to talk about, are you getting enough fiber in your diet?
Protein is the prom queen, But fiber is the really smart, cute girl who ends up, you know, like being
Yes.
super successful. She grows up and she finds the love of her life, has a beautiful family. Fiber's the real underdog winner.
Yes.
Protein, the prom queen, ends up with a drug and or alcohol addiction. I'm kidding. They're both great. Both are
I'm
great.
not saying that we shouldn't be talking about protein.
No,
I'm just saying, like,
just not enough people talk about fiber.
We're just really overlooking.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right, let's move this along. We're already at 45 minutes. So training during a bulk. Okay. I could be a horrible person and I could be like, you need to hop on my bulking training program. You need a training program that helps you maximize your muscle growth and does it for people who are specifically in a calorie surplus. That's bullshit. It's absolute baloney. It's hogwash. All training programs should stay basically the same between a deficit, between maintenance, between a calorie surplus, because the goal of any of them, at least in the context of muscle hypertrophy, muscle growth, all of them should be the goal of maximizing hypertrophy, maximizing muscle growth. So there aren't really any mandatory changes. However, your recovery may improve, especially if you're going from a deficit to a surplus, maintenance to a surplus. Yeah, calories may improve recovery a bit. So you could increase your training volume or intensity. Maybe start taking your sets closer to failure. Maybe start, adding an additional set or two of your priority muscle group here and there. Maybe add one more exercise if you want. But other than that, you don't really need to adjust training that much. Now, for tracking your progress over time, because this is like, how do you know if it's working? Holy shit. If I had $1 for every time somebody thought, is this working for me? I'd be a billionaire. I mean, really, I'd be a billionaire, because it's hard to know if what you're doing is actually paying off, because fitness is just so slow.
Yeah.
Muscle growth especially. God, it's slow. And then when I'm telling you, like, hey, yeah, we're going to kind of have to take the scale weight slowly. We're going to be gaining a pound a month. It's going to be really hard to see. You're probably thinking like, okay, then how the hell am I supposed to know if it's working or not?
Right.
Here's what you're going to do. You're going to monitor your body weight weekly using a rolling average. Okay. You're going to look at, you don't even have to do rolling average. I wrote that down. You don't have to do that. Just look at your body weight, look at the average for that week. Probably take your weight 3+ times per week, in the morning, after waking up, before eating or drinking anything, after using the bathroom with minimal clothing on. That way you just get a nice, solid, clean data. Do that 3+ times a week, maybe up to 7 times a week if you just want to make a daily habit of it. And then look at your weekly weight average and look at it like 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. Don't look at 1 week to the next week. You can do that if you're in a fat loss phase. You can do that and make a little bit better inferences, not in a bulk, because it's so slow. Okay, once you got the body weight, next I'd take measurements. I'd be taking your neck, your waist, your hips, and any priority muscle groups like your arms. For me personally, I do every first of the month, I do neck, shoulders, chest, waist, hips,
biceps, triceps.
No, not biceps and triceps. That would be crazy. Just arms in general. Like biceps and triceps, not biceps. They're not two separate measurements, is what I'm trying to say. It's just arms, like upper arms is what I would call them. But yeah, sure. And then forearms, I do like quads, hamstrings / like just thighs. And then I do calves. So I do the whole thing. I do everything, but you don't have to do that. You don't have to be a psychopath. And then you take progress photos. I think progress photos are the number one. Like that's like the most important thing. Mm-hmm. You do not know how much you're growing until you take progress photos. That is the number. I would really say that's the number one thing. And then, track strength and, increases in, across the board, they can be kind of seen as strength improvement can be seen as a proxy for muscle growth, but it's not absolutely definitive of muscle growth. Greggy of Strong. I'm going to scrub that. He cannot know I called him Greggy. Not that he listens to this, but God forbid that got to him. I'm not going to scrub it, but I hope that we can remain friends. But Greg Nuckols of Stronger by Science recently put out an article on this titled data don't tell you much about hypertrophy. And it was really good. And basically his thing was like, people are using strength data to make inferences on hypertrophy data, but we already, which could be fine, but we already have hypertrophy data in that same thing. So on those same topics. So it's just like, you guys are crazy. Anyway, if you are relatively trained, like you've been lifting for a while and you're seeing increases in similar rep schemes over time, you're probably gaining muscle. Muscle is very multifactorial. You know, there is, the biggest thing is, well, at first at least, is your brain starts to recruit more muscle fibers. So you're just getting that neurological gains. Like you're not actually, you are getting stronger, but it's not like a physical, I guess you could kind of debate that it is physical because you're recruiting more muscle fibers. But anyway, it's not like the muscle's actually growing that much. Like, holy shit, I'm 30% stronger, I must have 30% more muscle. That's not really what's happening at first. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into strength, you know, limb length, muscle insertion points, neurological gains, the law of specificity. If you want to get better at something, you do that thing. So if I started like barbell bench pressing today, I haven't done it in a year, but if I started doing it today, I'd be pretty bad. But 4 or 6 weeks from now, I'm gonna be back up there, right at my prime. Anyway, but and so yeah, for me, you know, I want to say that like if you're relatively trained, you've been doing the same exercise for a while, you're doing the same rep schemes, and you're seeing the strength go up, you're probably kind of maxing out on a lot of the neurological gains, and you probably are gaining muscle at that point. Now, where this wouldn't be as applicable is if you're training in like the 7 to 12 rep range, right? And then you do like a 1 rep max peaking block where you are training to express your strength in a 1 rep thing, like, and you're like, oh wow, look how much stronger I'm getting, and you see this strength expression of your 1 rep max explode. That is not indicative of muscle growth. That's indicative of your skill at that one thing improving at a very high rate. So it's an improvement in specificity, not necessarily an improvement in muscle growth. I hope that makes sense, and I hope that helps clarify like when strength improvements are indicative of, or maybe a sign of muscle growth, and when it's maybe not so much of a sign. And then finally, just like try to use a good program. There's a lot of good programs out there. Mine is the best.
I agree.
No, there's a lot of good programs out there, but you know, if you've been listening to me talk about bulking for 52 minutes, I think we have somewhat of a connection. I think you and I would hit it. I think you and I would be friends. So if you've been messing around with random workouts, I'd encourage you to try mine. And as a thank you for listening to our podcast, this is the first time I'm ever doing this. Use code LTB. That's lowering the barrier. The initials LTB pod for 10% off 1 month or 20% off 1 year of the A Team. As a thank you for listening to 53 minutes of me yap about bulking. And we're not done yet. So once again, that's code LTBPOD for 10% off 1 month or 20% off 1 year of the A Team, and you still get that 7-day free trial. All right, ending a bulk. So when you transition out, you can either go to maintenance or straight back to a cut. It's not really going to make a huge difference. However, the one caveat I have on this is like, if you do go straight into a cut, prepare for some intense hunger on those first few days.
Yeah, the first few days they're
tough.
Tough.
Yeah, you've seen it from me, you know, so many times now.
Yeah.
Where I'm just like, yeah, I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have gone into a cut. Bulking was awesome. But then like 3, 4, 5 days, 6 days, your body starts to catch on. And yeah, it'll be a little bit different for everybody depending on where your calorie goals are and like how sensitive you are to hunger.
Yeah.
But I mean, and I'm not even like that sensitive to hunger. I think I manage it very well compared to most people. But even for me, moving straight from a bulk into a cut, it's like you get whiplash, and it's just all of a sudden.
That's where the like really big change in calorie comes from.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, that was a quick section. So some psychological and lifestyle considerations. You know, you have to keep in mind, and I think you're kind of picking up on this at this point, but you need to be okay with this temporary weight gain. You need to be okay with feeling like, especially if you worked really hard to get lean enough to see your abs, or to have shoulder striations or wherever you're at. Maybe it's just like you don't feel like you enjoy the way you're fitting in your clothes. Going into a surplus, that's all going to be washed away over the course of 3, 6, 12 months, however long you decide to bulk for. So you kind of need to zoom out, and like I'd almost consider giving yourself a timeline of like that way you're not kind of going for, until you just don't know. Maybe say like, okay, I'm going to bulk for 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks, whether that's, I probably wouldn't do it for just a month because like nothing's going to happen really. Like it's just not going to add up to much muscle growth. It's not that nothing is happening. It's just that like the changes won't really be that significant.
Yeah.
Especially
if you are going at a slower
if you're going at a slower rate, like if you gain 1 pound, it's like, okay.
Right. And the perk of that is then at the end, you don't have as much body fat to cut, if that's what you choose to do.
Right.
If you choose to go into a cut afterward.
I'd bring the mic a little closer here. Yeah, maybe like just
I'll
down a little
I'll
bit.
just come forward.
No, I mean, yeah.
I'll like that.
So yeah, you just kind of got to zoom out and just be comfortable with letting go of the ab definition or the shoulder striations or whatever you've worked really hard for. Bulking is this kind of mental game where it's like, damn, I feel like I worked so hard to get that lean and now I'm just throwing it away. But you have to remember that like in the long run, you're going to look more muscular. That's really that's the goal for it. Yeah. Anything else that you want to talk about on that, like the psychological or lifestyle considerations?
I don't think so. I think those are the big ones.
I guess, one other thing that I want to mention again is that like this is not a free for all. It's not all of a sudden like I think that people who enter into a surplus need to be more accurate with tracking in a surplus than they do need to be in a deficit.
Yeah.
Deficit, we got a lot of wiggle room. We have a lot of wiggle room. And like in a bulk, it's not like all of a sudden you're just going to like explode. Like that's not, but I think people can get very carried away with a bulk, and this
is going to be my hot take of an episode, but like with the idea of a slow bulk of like 100 extra calories, in my mind, that's still just maintenance.
It's like,
I know it's not.
I know it's like borderline is maintenance. Like it is.
So
it's such a small surplus, and it's so we have to be so. I want to say like so accurate. There is still a degree of variability there. Like I said, with all these estimates, and so you don't need to be on the calories on the money, and so you can still give yourself some wiggle room there. But this isn't the time to. Don't be like, I'm gonna go into a bulk and I'm not gonna track my calories. Nope. Yeah. Nah.
You'd have to be very dialed in with your own hunger and the meals that you eat regularly, but that's tough.
Yeah. I mean, even then it'd be really, really hard. It's like, oh, I'm going to add 1 extra tablespoon of olive oil at dinner. And that's the only change I'm making to my intake.
Also, that's not to say that you have to track calories forever though.
No,
like
it's a short-term tool, it shouldn't be a forever tool for anybody. Let's see. Do we even need to cover this section 7? I feel like we've already covered that.
I feel like we've.
Section 8 will cover this, I suppose. So who would it be right for? I think 3 people come to mind, and there are others for sure. But like, okay, 3 people it might be right for: a lean-ish beginner who's aiming for rapid muscle growth. This was my case. I was very, very thin, and I wanted to gain muscle as quickly as possible. I hadn't been training much. And so I put on muscle like crazy, those first 2, 3 years. I think that would be an appropriate situation. Another situation would be maybe an intermediate lifter who wants to prioritize, gaining muscle and getting bigger, and is okay with adding a bit of body fat. Totally reasonable. And then finally, maybe a seasoned lifter, but they're returning from a long break. So they have that, there's something called like myonuclei domain theory, which is when your muscle shrinks, the nucleus of the muscle stays behind, And so it's like the muscle memory effect, or, some people call it that. So the idea here is that you gain muscle way more quickly than you did the first time because those myonuclei are already there, the nucleus of a muscle cell. So that could be another situation where bulking could be appropriate, in addition to the other ones that we've talked about earlier in this episode. But okay, let's wrap it up there. We're hitting the hour mark, so I think this is a pretty good spot to wrap it up. Is bulking dead? What would you say? Yes or no?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Pretty crazy to say that, like, at the end of the day, a bulk is just gaining weight,
It's
like
just gaining weight.
intentionally gaining weight.
Yeah, and maybe you do gain muscle like a bit faster, and I mean the research seems to support that. Again, there's some research that's showing that it's damn close, but I think we have enough research, because we can never see like one new study and be like, oh, okay, well, this one new study said something opposite than the past 49 or however many that's not an actual, and then be like, okay, well, this new study said this, so I guess the other 49 studies were, they're nothing. They didn't mean anything. This is a pro tip when it comes to research. Don't let it entirely influence your decisions. Let it nudge you in a direction. That's every single individual study. Now, when we talk about a meta-analysis or something where it's like we're looking at like 5, 10, 20, 30 studies, like a bunch of studies. Okay, then yeah, that'll have a bigger nudge in a different direction.
It's more of a shove.
Yeah, it's a shove. I like that. So bulking, dead? No, definitely not. For those who want to optimize muscle growth and are okay with putting on a bit of body fat, do your thing. Go ahead and bulk. The dreamer bulk, though, don't do that. That's a stupid thing to do. That's a very stupid thing to do. Finally, is bulking right for you? I hope that after this hour, you have a good idea of if it's a inappropriate decision for you or if it's less appropriate. And just kind of weigh out the pros, cons, and your goals and the situation. And, if you have questions about it, feel free to just shoot me a DM and be like, hey, here's kind of my situation. Do you think this would be right for me? And I'll give you my honest opinion. Okay. Outro, anything else you want to say before I wrap it up?
I don't think so.
Cool. All right. So yeah, check out the A-Team. I plugged the discount code earlier, like, I don't know, 10 minutes ago. If you skipped ahead to the very end, go back. It's LTB. Yeah, LTB pod for 10% off 1 month or 20% off an entire year. Check out Forward Forever. Check out the one-on-one coaching program that we've worked so hard on, the Change Project. I am bringing on, like a few clients, like a few. So like just like not too many. So just a few. And please give us a 5-star review. It really means a lot and it helps this podcast grow. And we don't get paid for this podcast unless you buy stuff using my discount codes, which I won't even know if that's from the podcast or not.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. I hope you're having a great day wherever you're listening to this. And if you have any questions that I can answer, please don't hesitate to shoot me a message. Okay. Take care, everybody.